I was listening to someone and they said, there is no meme more potent than the Reddit Atheist meme in terms of its like cultural impact. And I agree immediately. It was like, yes, I don't need a peer-reviewed study to know this. I know it's true. But like every permutation,
Reddit Atheist might ask you for a peer-reviewed study before you make that claim.
That whole family of memes, the Reddit fedora-wearing atheist meme. I need a peer-reviewed study before I can accept your self-evident truth as fact. That whole genre of memes, in terms of just like cultural efficiency, mimetic efficiency, the heavy lifting that it does, it points to a very real phenomenon that is difficult to articulate I mean, you can say the arrogance of the intellect and all that, but like, you know, sometimes it's like, oh yeah, okay. It immediately speaks to I've seen this before. And it judges it negatively, as it should. And it just speaks so much to our current culture where we're so propositional focused, everything's logic based. You know, consistency is the most important measure of the validity of an idea, all that stuff. What do you think of the Reddit meme, its cultural significance?
Right.
How our modern neoliberal paradigm is a descendant of that, among other things?
Yeah, I think I'm a great person to ask because I was a Reddit atheist at one point. And in fact, I was a Reddit mod even. Oh, so one of the most hated people imaginable, really.
Nice.
And
I'm a Discord moderator, so you know.
Right. Well, and that's
the second iteration.
I don't know if that's as hated as, because Reddit mod is also a meme of like, this is a Reddit mod type attitude, which is very much related to the Reddit atheist. I mean, people will even just throw out the term at this point, Reddit, just to be like
very
Reddit argument that you made, you know? And so it's just become sort of a catch-all term for this over intellectualized and over also like very arrogant. You know, there's a lot of subreddits you can go onto just to learn about. I mean, it serves a valid function, right? I want to get a new golf club or whatever.
Yeah.
But then there's a certain set of opinions that you'll find. There's like a sort of hive mind, even on the golf subreddit, and they'll make judgments about like, oh, you bought that driver. You bought into the hype of that. So, you know, it's like, so it can really apply to anything. The Reddit atheists, I think, are particularly obnoxious because they dial the arrogance up to 11. There's the really famous meme that I know we've talked about, or it became a meme, where there was somebody who was a poster on the atheism subreddit who said, in this moment, I am euphoric, not because of the blessings of any false god, but because I am enlightened by my own intelligence. Which is just, I mean, there's something, it should be put in a museum. It basically has been. It's in the Internet Museum.
I'm editing the memes in post as we talk about them. So
right.
We will see them.
Right. And then that comes along with the fedora wearing guy or a guy playing with his sword in his yard or whatever.
Right. And that, I do think that is that is the curse of our age in terms of like, moral relativism, right? Well, pedophilia is bad. It's like, I'm going to need a peer-reviewed study before I agree with that. Right. It's like and it's funny because the meme of the Reddit atheist, it's like, it's an image. So it's intuitive right off the bat. And it's like, but the fact that it works, the fact that it carries value is like a reaffirmation of its own, the point it's making, which is you don't actually need to logically deduce everything.
Right.
Now, of course, the question then is, and I run into this, and I'm sure many people who are high in openness do, is like, well, at what point do you draw where do you stick you plant your flag in terms of like, okay, well, you know, pedophilia is clearly wrong and all that. It's like, back in ancient Greece, that was normalized, and you know, there's other practices, and that becomes all culturally relative. It's like, well, you know,
incest is a big one. I mean, I've seen very popular streamers, you know, making that logic bro style argument.
We should not name which streamers.
Sure, yeah. Some very popular streamers have gone out and said things such as...
I'm pretty sure Richard Dawkins said he can't come up with an argument as to why two sisters shouldn't do stuff.
There you go. He can't come up with an argument. Right. Can't come up with a rational argument for why that's true. Is there some sort of... I mean... when it comes to morality, I mean, it seems really obvious. and I guess Alex O'Connor has popularized ethical emotivism.
Yeah.
There's a really large part of it that is just people's sensibilities that has really very little to do with constructing a syllogistic argument. If you ask people, they probably will construct one, but is that post hoc reasoning? I think most of the time it is.
Yeah, it's like Jonathan Haidt, elephant rider type thing. It's like, well, we feel a certain way and then we rationalize backwards. But then the argument is,
why should we be guided by how people feel?
Because we have that attitude. You might have that attitude towards like gay people or something like that, and it's like, well, that's not. Or even more specifically, it's like, bitterness. We're wired to find bitterness, like bad. We spit out bitter food or like bitter roots or something like that. But coffee's bitter, and you can have an acquired taste, and then you get an advantage. So the fact that we feel a disgust impulse towards something doesn't mean that it's morally bad, which is true. But then,
or you could say it turns out it actually is the definition of what's morally bad for many people.
Well, that's the thing is moral judgments are processed in the part of the brain that processes disgust. It's like literally that's why all of our metaphors are like, oh, I feel gross. This is disgusting. I wash my hands of this. It's like there's that's not a coincidence, and it's cross cultural. That's the convergence on disgust metaphors for morality that we find repulsive or whatnot. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, well, you need that intuitive disgust intuition to be able to make any moral judgment at all. So obviously it's not just, well, if I find it disgusting, it's bad. But then the Reddit Atheist thing is like, well therefore, because unless you can put it in a logical syllogism, unless you can logically justify the emotion, then there's no basis for it. Then we get into total moral relativism.
Right. Well, and I would say this is the pathway that leads out of Reddit Atheism, and it's probably what led me out of it. It's why I would say I stopped being a Reddit atheist when I became Nietzschean, because one of Nietzsche's central points is that there's an evaluative judgment. Well, he even goes down to the level of, even on the basis of our sense perceptions, there is a value judgment that shaped, like, so the organs that we have, like your eyes, there must have been a value judgment that it is better to see light and more forms and colors of light and see it more clearly, and that there was an advantage to that. There, whether we see it in terms of utilitarian advantage or evolutionary advantage, it doesn't really matter. The argument would essentially be, even our perceptions of the world have been part of this process of valuing, essentially. I mean, Nietzsche, one of the things he says is that if we had, there are plenty of other phenomena that we could sense that we don't, like the electrical field.
Yeah, right.
So, and whereas there are other animals like birds, they can like have a sense for magnetism and things like that. And so it seems as though there were a select series of value judgments that went into making even the way that we perceive the world. And then you could say with, the Reddit Atheist, I mean, what was the common critique that was made of them circa heyday of Jordan Peterson era that he made and popularized with Richard Dawkins? Particularly, Richard Dawkins, what did he say? Richard Dawkins is a Christian in terms of his values, but he metaphysically denies Christianity, something like that. And so that's why I would say this is sort of the way out of Reddit atheism, because it's the perception that critique is correct, essentially, that all of those, even the Reddit atheists claim that you should only believe something morally if you can reduce it to a logical syllogistic argument, is in and of itself a value judgment.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And indeed, they have all sorts of value judgments and moral judgments that they're willing to make that will all ultimately, at the end of the day, redound to a pre-rational valuation of the worth of something.
Yeah, right.
And I think I know there are moral realists who would disagree with me on that. I think it's very hard to, I don't think anyone has objectively demonstrated morality quite yet.
Yeah, it's funny. Did you watch the Sam Harris Jordan Peterson debates when they did them in London or
I think
Dublin
we've
in Canada?
Talked about this, like not on a recording, but I think we've talked about this. I've seen, or I listened to the podcasts that they did together way back in the day. But, and I've only seen clips of like these are like Pangburn debates.
Yeah. because the whole thing is basically this issue is like Sam Harris is the moral objectivist, and we can just accept as facts things like the concept of well-being being good. We should maximize well-being. And the point is like, well, what do you mean by well-being? Who's well-being? And like, what happens when there's trade-offs between like your family and someone else? And he points out, well, you know, we have a concept like health. Health is somewhat amorphous. It's not a definite concept. And so we can vaguely gesture in the direction of, as long as we can agree that health is good and more health is better, then we can proceed down that. And Sam Harris said, well, we can just apply that with well-being and all that. And I'm sympathetic to that. But the whole idea of like, it's an objective fact that it would be better if everyone's well-being increased. It's like, first off, and I can already feel this is a Reddit atheist thing, because it's like, as soon as you get into the metaphysics of, well, what do we mean by like the worst suffering for everyone is bad and good? It's like the path out of that, the whole is just, look, that's what the heaven and hell debate is. It's like, we should move towards heaven and away from hell. You have the, you know.
Isn't it funny how we all have a Reddit atheist in our heads? I can see you're almost
true.
Like
it's
debating
archetypal,
with it.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's the reason that meme has power, is because it's hitting on something that's a universal, which is the arrogance of the intellect, or even just the application of the intellect stripped of intuition and all that. And so I guess, I mean,
my problem with Sam Harris's argument, though, is that the devil's in the details.
Devil's always in the details.
And it's very easy to say, okay, the worst, what would we say? Like the worst outcome possible would be everyone being horribly tortured for eternity. Right. Okay. Doesn't seem to be on the table. Correct. That's like you have to push to this really extreme example, and it's always mediated through these really abstract concepts.
Yes.
That in order to actually implement those concepts, I mean, it's just so silly, right? I mean, everyone who's a political activist today, well, most of them probably believed or do believe that they are doing the right thing to increase human well-being. They just have different definitions of that. They have a different story of how you get there. And then people end up quibbling over details that end up being really important when you get into the nitty-gritty. And so it's like there's all these value judgments at every step of the road that I don't know. He just wants everyone to like embrace this.
Yeah. The point about it's abstract. It's like the worst possible suffering for everyone. It's like you're kind of talking about a reality that's not physically possible. So you're just kind of assuming there is a pole that we can all orient towards. It's funny. Do you know who T1 Jump is, or T Jump? No. Epitome of the Reddit atheist. I talked to him one time and I was like, well, what is like the ultimate good, or what's the definition of the ideal? He's like, the ideal would be a universe where everyone has complete autonomy as if they were God. I'm like, what the fuck? You just put that that would be hell. Are you kidding me? Like, if you had absolute power and no limitation, you could, to me, that's hell.
Even if that were to not be hell, let's say it all works out fine. It is funny that in order to posit his ideal, it's something that's completely unrealistic and might as well be as far from our actual situation on earth as heaven is.
Yeah, right.
I mean, where everyone has the absolute autonomy of a god.
Yeah, I know, exactly. And I just remember, I was like, oh my God,
life can't be worth living unless we all live like literal gods.
Yeah, yeah. And autonomy being the highest value.
Talk about a pre-rational value judgment. Exactly. That's driving your whole thinking and your whole activity.
So this then, currently I'm on an arc of questioning liberalism.
Okay.
Nobody loves post-liberalism more than I do, depending on how you define it. Depends what you mean by post-liberal. But, basically
as long as we agree that
this is the
human well-being is the best thing.
Yeah, exactly. No. Yeah. The Reddit atheist thrives in the liberal worldview of debate and rational analysis and all this, because it's like, but the pre-rational judgment is, well, individual autonomy is still the ultimate value. And it's like, That's what that's the liberal presupposition that I question almost entirely. And like in micro examples and macro examples. In micro examples, it's like if you are at a table and you're like, I'm not going to be on my phone because I want to talk to people, but everyone else is on their phone. Mm-hmm. Well, they haven't infringed on your individual autonomy, but you actually do lack the ability to have meaningful conversation because they're making their decisions. You go to a concert, everyone's on their phone, everyone's filming it, and it's blocking people's sight and all that. It's like, well, you don't have to be on your phone. Or even just like, do whatever you want in life. Whatever you feel like is your call, what is important, you go do that instead of like, no, do something hard for like 20 or 30 years that you don't want to do what society needs. And then, you will have, meaning come out of that or whatever. Just as like the opposite kind of traditionalist.
Or even, the logic of the market. I mean, I've seen, here in Austin, you'll see things like history get torn down and then they'll put in like a multi-use development, which is technically more efficient.
Yeah.
And like you'll see this whole process, but like on the grand scheme of things, it's like, okay, economic development's good and, capital efficiency is good. Yeah. And why shouldn't people, but then you'll see sort of, old historic icons sort of get torn down and things like that. And, it might be a little bit different in some places in Europe where they say we're going to preserve this regardless of market forces. I think that's really useful. But yeah, I mean, there is this logic of everyone's just making their own individual choices for their best, but you could end up in a situation where everything changes around you in a way that is totally non-congenial to you.
Correct. And infringes on your freedom in some fundamental sense. Innovation being it's like the whole market logic of like, well, we're going to create technologies, deploy them and implement them because innovation and progress are always good. This is like the David Deutsch, Karl Popper type, like infinite progress. It's like progress, the liberal assumption, this goes into transhumanism as well. It's like progress is a good in and of itself. It's like, maybe not. Maybe playing the same exact game with the same people for 20 years is actually more conducive to human flourishing than coming up with all kinds of new ways to do things. It's like, I was talking about this today with someone, big fan of board games, and I love Warhammer tabletop. Mm-hmm. It's like, that's not progress when you,
like the rules are going to continually change, and
and there might be like balance updates and stuff like that. But you're not fundamentally changing the underlying game,
right?
And that's and like a game isn't less fun because it's had the same rules for 100 years. It's like it's just more.
I play chess.
Yeah, exactly. It's like
came up with that like 1,500 years ago.
Right. So the idea that innovation is the goal, rather than some sort of like steady state game. Stable, whatever.
I would actually
bothers me.
I think
it's about the Reddit fucking atheists who are like, "Wow, what's the argument against putting out AI?"
Right.
You know what? Because it doesn't infringe on one's freedom. It's like,
right.
Oh my god, dude.
I would take this issue on a little bit differently because I think, okay, there are people who are actually reactionary who they have a vision of a past state of society that they want to go back to, but I think in general most ideologies they have some conception of progress, but just like with this idea of like well-being or health, what does that progress constitute, or what constitutes that progress? What is it towards? What is the value we're in service of? And to me, I think the real malaise in liberalism is that nobody really seems to have a narrative about what this is all for. So, we're going to, use AI to improve capital efficiency, and there will be more investments and developments. We'll get more goods to more people more efficiently. We'll have more access to even more different new and types of goods and services that you've never even dreamed of. And, I can imagine that if you're the guy working in the Amazon warehouse, so you're one of the people who's been turned into a cog of this machine of production. If people ever wonder where these like socialistic or even fascistic or just any general like anti-liberal sentiments come from, I think it's a perception of somebody usually in that position who says, why am I doing this? Why am I busting my ass so that somebody can have their flat screen TV shipped halfway across the country? There's not, I mean, I think I've brought this up before, but you know, even during, say, World War II, as recently as that, there was the whole narrative of Uncle Sam, I want you. You are working in a factory, but this is a part of a war economy. You're contributing to us defending freedom and democracy the world over. You're part of, even the guy that's in the factory just putting, you know, whether he's making shells to go overseas or just normal distribution of goods, you're part of this whole collective project that has a value in mind. Like, we're defending freedom, democracy against barbarism.
And it's personified too, which makes it more relatable.
It's personified, and yeah, there's a real, you know, and you could say, I mean, in every material way and in terms of every convenience, our lives are much, much better now. Yeah. But we're way more anxious and depressed now than people in that situation. Yeah. And so, to me, I think that's the big issue, is there's no real story. And I think what we found is that the story, oh, well, you're just like improving people's lives, like improving well-being in that general sense. Right, yeah. That ends up just producing this logic of a kind of hollow utilitarianism. It's just hedonic pleasures. Like, we're just making pleasure more accessible. And I think that's another thing I took from Nietzsche is realizing pleasure can never be the point of life. His argument for that is essentially it's manifestly obvious from the fact that pleasure and pain are physiological sensations. They're means. They're not ends. They're means because their body is telling you to do something. Oh, right, sure. They're pushing you or pulling you in a certain direction. So if you make, the whole point of my life is to have pleasure, you've already made this huge category error.
Yeah, you've confused the means,
the ends and the means. The end is just to be have as much pleasure and comfort as possible. And there's something about, like, logically speaking, the Reddit Atheist can't come up with a reason why that shouldn't be true. Yeah, exactly. You know?
Well, that's the oh my god, there's a great meme of, like, it's a man or it's a guy talking to another guy and they're both looking at this person and they're in it's like a VR. Heroin is being into him, and it's like the Auto Masturbator 3000, and it's like
let people enjoy things.
Yeah, it's like, this is weird.
Yeah.
Oh, geez, let people enjoy things. It's
right.
Like, again, pure liberalism, Reddit atheism in a nutshell of, like, individual autonomy, blah blah. And specifically, like, the AI example of, like, well, this, you know, we're building towards this thing. First off, I get the game theory dynamics of, if we don't build it, China will build it. Part of me doesn't buy that, because it's like, well, AI, you know, it's like, I get that. That's the only real, like, that's a fair argument to make. I suppose.
I have, like, a little nagging doubt about that argument too, and I think it's because, actually, to reference our friend Karl Popper you just brought up, it's unfalsifiable, which means that it's nonsense. You know what I'm saying? Like, sure. There's no argument you can make.
Yeah, right, because the threat is always there.
Right, that can ever refute that.
Yep, and if it's not China, it's whoever's next and
right.
Blah, 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 whatever.
And you don't have an insight into the minds of the Chinese Communist Party and what they're doing and what they're thinking. So you can always, even if you don't have any evidence that they're pursuing it, they always could be.
Yeah, and also it's like, okay, well, if they get there first and they build it and it happens to be unaligned, it'll destroy them. So, like, you could just easily make the case that whoever gets there first is screwed, because if it's not properly aligned, it will run amok through their thing.
Sure. But people have the Terminator 2 conception of this, though, that it'll nuke the whole world or something.
Yeah. Okay, but let's put that aside momentarily, because that's definitely not the only motivation for it. I don't know. Did you see this Diary of a CEO interview with Tristan Harris?
No.
Tristan Harris, he did The Social Dilemma. Right. Documentary, probably like 10, 15 years ago now. Mm-hmm. Or maybe no, less than that. Maybe sometime in the last 10 years. Very good. I think he's, Guy always asked the question of, do you believe this person is oriented towards the highest good? I think Tristan Harris is like, when I listen to him, I get the sense that he is oriented towards the highest good.
Right.
And he talks about what is the motivation and what are all the private conversations about the head of the AI companies and why they're developing stuff? It's like, it's ego. It's to build God. It's like, look, this is coming. So I'm going to be the one to build it.
Right.
And intelligence is the most valuable thing. I swear to God, when I make my video call, I hereby declare a Butlerian jihad. The clip that I will use is Sam Altman talking to Lex Friedman. And Lex is like, so you're assuming that this AGI will be able to get us, will be this super intelligent being and help us get all the answers and all that. And Sam Altman looks at him and goes, don't you want to know? Don't you want to know all the secrets of the universe, the secrets of physics? It's like, actually, no.
Right.
I don't believe that my existence... Okay, forget the religious argument about, well, God put me here for whatever reason. It wasn't to become a god. I know that. But like purely just within the confines of just secular atheist morality is like, what logical reason are you putting forward that getting ultimate propositional knowledge of the nature of the universe is more conducive to well-being than what I was saying about like finding the best way to create a stable, steady state game and return to your traditions and, and be surrounded by people and all that. But that's not because of individual autonomy, we're not allowed to have that conversation, because if I'm saying, hey, you need to stop what you're doing because it might, you're infringing on their autonomy. If you want to create your commune and all that and be a Luddite, you can do that. But it's like,
build your own data center, Paul.
Yeah, exactly.
Build your own AI superintelligence.
Yeah. And it's just like, it's so...
Yeah, I think
frustrated.
There's something, there's a great passage from Nietzsche in The Gay Science where he says that it is a metaphysical belief on which our faith in science rests, which was also the belief of Plato that God is truth and truth is divine. And his point is essentially that, and he goes through and makes kind of an argument that you can't take account for people's drive for knowledge strictly from utilitarian advantage, which is funny because that's how people justify science. They justify the pursuit of science, scientific truths, in terms of how it improves our lives. And that goes all the way back to like Francis Bacon. He, in his writings, is talking about how we need to become masters over nature. We need to get her to reveal her secrets to us so that we can basically harness the powers of nature and use them for the benefits of humanity.
Right.
So that's always been the selling point. That's always been and if you're a Dawkinsian and that's the way you think about things, that has a certain sense to it. That might be why you think consciousness even exists, is to give us a greater evolutionary advantage and control over things. But what it was like a bombshell moment for me where I read that passage from Nietzsche, because he has this whole struggle with truth throughout his whole philosophical canon. And essentially his argument is that, no, it actually has nothing to do with all that. Maybe that in origins it had something to do with that, but the origin of something and the function it's serving now they're not necessarily related. And that there is essentially, I think, what these people want, the reason why he says it's a metaphysical faith, and it has to do with this idea that God is truth. It's like when people say mathematics is the language of the universe, or something like that, where they think they're peering into the code of the matrix and they're seeing what they're trying to find, like immaterial, universal, and eternal truths, essentially. That's what I think somebody like Sam Altman, when he says, don't you want to know? That's what he's really looking for, is don't you want to have the eternal truth that's true in all times and all places, and it's not, a changeable, phenomenal thing. It's like, we're going to crack the code of reality or something like that. And in that sense, if you look at it as a religious belief on the part of these transhumanists, it actually makes quite a bit of sense.
Sure.
Because who wouldn't want communion with the eternal truth of God?
Listen, you don't have to tell me that atheism...
They'll even bring on the apocalypse for it.
Yeah.
The
it's funny that what was the quote from Gay Science that it's
a metaphysical faith on which our belief in science rests.
and that belief is that
God is truth and truth is divine.
isn't that basically what Jordan Peterson says when he says science is nested in a religious claim that truth is redemptive and contact with truth is redemptive?
Yeah.
Because this is what the Reddit Atheists really don't.
Well, and Jordan Peterson was very influenced by Nietzsche.
Yeah.
I do think he actually misuses Nietzsche's views on truth a little bit.
No, but he wouldn't do that.
Well, I mean, clearly he has goals which are not the same as Nietzsche's, and his reading is what we might call parasitical in a certain way. I mean, this is a real philosophical term, but yeah,
fair.
yeah.
No,
Like,
that's fine.
and I would advise
atheist of you.
to all of your audience, you should parasitically read many authors that you don't agree with,
Sure.
and try and
Rob
extract
them of their valid talking points.
yeah, extract whatever nutrients you can from them. But on Jordan Peterson, the whole what was the quote you were
Truth
saying?
is redemptive.
Redemptive,
And
something
that's
like that.
That's the religion of science.
Yeah, you could put it like that. I think that he's charting a certain historical narrative about the entire reason why the scientific enlightenment happens in Europe is because there's a valuation of truth that happens through Christianity that arguably it requires Christianity, and the whole notion of Jesus is kind of like this really interesting historical rupture where, prior to that, religion was, culture comes from the word cult, and religions, these cults, were based on essentially people who were related to you by blood. Roman paganism, they didn't convert everyone to Roman paganism. Sometimes they syncretized with other deities and stuff.
Alignment.
But, they weren't really interested in that. Christianity is for the first time, this guy says, it's about what's in your heart. It's about your ideas, right? He doesn't put it like that, but it's about what you believe, essentially. And it's really important that you know the truth. And that changes the whole world. I would agree with Jordan Peterson on that.
Yeah.
And I think he gets a lot of that from Nietzsche as well. I wouldn't be so phallogocentric with it.
Phallogocentric.
Because, maybe it comes out of Buddhism as well.
Oh, bucko.
Yeah, there's certain things you got to say just to trigger people.
Yeah. That's fair.
But yeah.
What is your, this is a broad question, purposely, and take it where you want. The whole notion of cultural Christianity, because, it's a kind of a reaction to the liberal malaise of relativism. So now we're going to go back to this more tried and true operating system. Of course, I go to church. I talk to different pastors, including my own, and the differences between denominations and Christianity are not insignificant. I would often levy that critique against like Christian nationalists who are very kind of fundamentalists or very like, this is the truth. We have the objective truth. You don't have objective truth. We have objective truth. It's like, if you have objective truth, then how do these 3 billion Christians all have their different, and some of you all, half of you think they're going to hell, the other half think they're going to hell and all that. So the denominational differences and those are not insignificant, but there is something there.
Right.
And I guess, what is your thought about cult? Like, what do you just generally think about the whole idea of like the return to Christianity tradition as a reaction to the now clear excesses of Reddit Atheism, which we lovingly call liberalism now.
Right. Which I was going to say, it's interesting you tie that in with liberalism because it's at the Reddit atheist mindset, because it's at a time when liberalism is called into question, that now we have this resurgence of cultural Christianity. Overall, I'm very excited for the prospects of like a cultural Reformation and counter-Reformation, where the cultural Protestants and cultural Catholics form armies and kill each other over their cultural beliefs. But I think that for me at least, I hate to say this, I don't think it's going to reverse the I hate to say it because it's like what you're doing with your life.
Sure.
And I think it's a positive.
I'm doing a lot of things with my life.
But I think it's overall can be a positive thing for many people, but I don't think it's going to reverse the course of things in terms of Christianity, because there's already something about being a cultural Christian that is approaching Christianity from a rationalistic lens in some sense, and saying, I've identified some sort of bug in the code of liberalism, and it's like, oh, we've excluded this religion thing that's very important, and I'm going to now include it even though I don't believe in it. And that, I think can be very good for building pro-social values. It can be very good for people who have no sense, they feel like they're atomized, and it can kind of bring you into a community. But I guess the proof's in the pudding as to whether or not that actually transforms people's consciousness. And to me, that would seem, from a Christian perspective, to be the most important thing.
Yeah, well, the Bible is replete with, Paul says, like, if Jesus did not literally resurrect,
are you quoting yourself?
It's all for naught. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Saint Paul, not sinner, disgusting, degenerate Paul, which is me, but Saint Paul. This whole point is, you can't, the idea of like a cultural Christian has existed in the church as like, these are people who just go through the motions but don't actually believe it or whatnot. You have to have faith in your heart, and Jesus says it all the time. But again, it's like the current way I conceptualize it is, because again, in terms of what I believe in terms of like Christianity and all, it's like I go to church. I definitely believe in God. I do pray. And, what I believe about Jesus is personal, sacred enough that I don't spill all the beans on a podcast. But I kind of view it as like, well, I just don't. It's like, in some ways, it is like a different denomination. It's like you have all this you have the Catholics versus Orthodox and Catholics are heretics, Catholics and Protestants are heretics, some Protestants, whatever. So like the idea that you have like what you would call cultural Christian, people who are consciously like atheists but accept Christianity. I wouldn't describe myself as that. I'm much more Christian spiritualist, and like I do live my life by Christian morality, and it's like, well, then what do you actually believe? To me, it's like almost that's like another denomination. And then it's like, well, in that context, now you've gotten out of you have Christianity versus like cultural Christianity. It's like, well, now you're in a much narrower domain of interdenominational differences. And that's not as big of a problem as the like Christianity versus science type thing or something like that. And this, I'm speaking, this is very personal, like from what I've witnessed and all that. But I guess the broader point is, the moral, I mean, by their fruits you shall know them. And it's like, well, historically, my understanding is like the whole church attendance going down and up and all that, that's cyclical. This is not like some first time in history where church attendance goes down and then it's back up, or it's on the way up.
I think that is true. I don't know. People debate about this, so okay. I'm not going to say definitively one way or the other. But I think, like most trends, it goes up and down. But it also there's a general trend, especially in terms of. I mean, America too is a special case, right? Because among the Western world, there was a book, Weird, Western Educated Industrial, whatever the acronym is. Out of all the weird countries, we're perhaps the least weird. In terms of our religious devotion, because Americans are still pretty religious compared to like Nordic countries.
Sure.
But if you look at those countries, I mean, church attendance is like, the majority of people are raising their kids just to be secular.
Yeah.
And that would have been, maybe over generations, there are kind of back and forths going on. But 500 years ago, that didn't exist at all. One of the things Nietzsche says is that the proof that the faith in Christianity has declined is that the Christians no longer burn us. So I mean, that's kind of studying the history of philosophy, and especially the history of radical critics of like the current theological position, people like Spinoza, or Nietzsche would be another example, or like Spinoza or Descartes. You look at the context they were in, there's people who still to this day think Descartes was actually maybe even an atheist, but he appeals to God in his arguments because he's afraid of what would happen to him, because what had happened to Giordano Bruno and all sorts of other people. Yeah. I personally don't believe that. I think Descartes was like a Rosicrucian, but people had to hide a lot of things, Yeah. And so that might actually be a basis for a counter argument. Maybe people are just being more open because we have a more open society.
Sure.
And there were always some people who were like more atheistic. I mean, for me, the real question is, aside from the inevitability of it or what have you, why is there this perception that this is happening? Why did people leave the faith in the last number of generations? And I think it is, you can largely say, the ascendance of this more like rationalistic view of the world. But then the question is the answer to that to just sort of affirm faith in absentia of reason?
Yeah, that's...
Or to just do it even though you don't believe in it? There's I actually heard this from Zizek. I believe it was the physicist Niels Bohr. He was given some sort of, he went to a foreign country. He was given some sort of protective boon by like some local like superstitious thing. They're like, put this over your door and demons can't get in. And he did it. And a fellow physicist came and he was like, Neil, you don't believe in this, do you? And he said, the beauty part is, he told me, it works even if you don't believe in it. So, which is great because
there's a level of wisdom there.
Right. And I feel like that's what people are kind of trying to do with the cultural Christianity thing.
I agree. It's not as simple as like, well, if people go back to church, problems will be solved. It's like, no, that's not the issue. It's also like, at what level does the problem need solved? Because there's like I have my personal life and like my struggle with faith and all that and different things. But then there's like political and right. level. And it's like, it is sort of, and to instrumentally, I'm going to use like Christianity for political ends. It's like, okay, well that's, we need to reorient society. We need to restabilize society. So we'll make this sort of return to Christianity for this like, instrumental thing. Well, that's no good. But on the other hand, I know people who, like, for example, they had kids, and then as soon as they had the kids, they're like, oh, I'm going back to church because it changed me, and there's something about that. And it's like, well, is that instrumental? It's like, no, maybe it is like, you reevaluate your assumptions and your and faith and religion and all that when it starts causing problems that the whole religion was meant to, like a drug addict who goes down the pure hedonistic rabbit hole and then looks in the mirror when they're at like rock bottom and they're like, oh, I need God now. It's like, well, that's just instrumental. You're just using God because you want to feel better about your drug. It's like, well, you can look at that cynically. And I do think people do that politically, and people would accuse me of doing that. And it's like, no, first off, because this parallels my personal, struggle with religion and all that. But yeah, I don't want to pretend it's as simple as we'll just go, just say you believe in, or just, kind of return to Christianity even if you don't believe it. But like the whole idea of like see, this is the thing of the faith idea is like, I don't have scientific proof that Sam Altman is fucking wrong when he says, well, what's wrong with building God? Don't you want to know the secrets of the universe? I just know, no, I don't want that. And it's immoral and it's bad, and Tower of Babel and insert every other religion, whatever. That's bad. And I'm as confident in that as any other moral claim that I would make, and yet I don't have scientific proof for it.
Yeah.
So it's like, why can I believe that? Mm-hmm. And then how does that map onto faith? And like, is that actually how I feel about like Jesus and all that? It's all complicated fucking stuff. Nietzsche. Keegan, I need all the answers. So if you could provide.
Well, it's just interesting because actually, this kind of cuts against the point I made earlier, but it was something that came to mind in terms of the sort of eternal back and forth between people fleeing religion and then coming back.
Yeah.
It's interesting because on the series of episodes that I was working on recently that's coming out now, I was talking about basically German Romanticism and rationalism. And I realized reading like Friedrich Jacobi, so people in the audience listening, you probably know Jacobi because it's like a meme among philosophy nerds now that portraits of Kant that they put up is usually actually a picture of Jacobi that's misattributed.
Okay, I thought you were going to say it's a meme because they're talking about Yakub. You know who Yakub is?
No idea what that
is. You know who
is.
Yakub is?
No.
We'll do a Yakub section later.
Okay, I thought it was pronounced Jacob.
No, Yakub.
Okay. The inventor of white people.
Inventor of white people, yeah.
He used
romantic research.
What was it? Tricknology.
Tricknology. That's so funny, dude.
I don't ever talk about that because I don't want my audience to get any ideas about about creating new forms of people. But yeah, but Jacobi is
Yakub has made a resurgence. But
he also, fun fact, inventor of the term nihilism. And he invents the term nihilism to essentially say all of this German idealist philosophy you're doing, in the end, is going to lead to nihilism. That's why he invents the term, is to say philosophers are going, and his solution was essentially, we need to go back to faith, because the way he puts it is logic is elaborative. Mm-hmm. It's not the basis of knowledge. It elaborates on what you already know based on sensation and feeling. And then you use logic. And so it's like a misunderstanding. That was his problem with Spinoza and Descartes, was all these philosophers have been writing about God, trying to prove God. And he asked the question, what God do they prove? Is it the same God that Christians believe in? And there's like a specificity to the Christian God and a particularity. Christians don't just believe in the God proved by the ontological argument.
Yeah, right.
That's why all the arguments for God, I think, don't work, because they don't actually lead you to any specific God.
That's literally what the interdenominational debates about those presuppositional arguments are. Is like the presuppositional argument it'll lead you to a first cause, which you can call God, but it says nothing about a reincarnated Jesus. It says nothing about all of the central aspects of Christianity.
Well, so it's funny. When I was a militant atheist in my youth, I debated Christians with the who used the tag argument. Yeah. I actually debated this Baptist pastor on his radio show when I was 19, and he started doing presup and tag, and I wasn't really familiar with it, but that was my first crash course into it, way before most people ever heard of this stuff. And it's kind of it's almost an afterthought to my comment on what that argument would be if we were to get into it, but it's that the second step of the argument is never as impressive as the first one. If the first step is, I'm going to get you to logically accede to the idea that there is a God, okay, now prove it's the Christian one.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's where their arguments, I would put it to those people that they've never produced a logical argument for Christianity. Because even if they make an argument using logic for Christianity, they have to appeal to like history, textual criticism, the Bible. They have to bring up evidence. They have to talk about sensations and feelings in terms of like your deeply held beliefs, that resonate with you and stuff like that, to really get people to go over to Christianity. And it's because a lot of those guys are not actually trying to convert people. I don't think.
Yeah, of course.
They're playing a game.
Yeah, it's literally an autistic game.
Right. But anyway, this whole thing is really old, and Friedrich Jacobi's whole thing was, we need to go back to faith. It's essentially back to church romanticism. Mm-hmm. And what I would wish for now, just for my taste, is something that transcends this dialectic between Reddit atheism and back to church romanticism. Yeah. And that's why, Nietzsche has kind of a religion of life that he creates. The thing is, I don't imagine the whole cultural Christianity thing is kind of something I observe, but don't really get involved with, because I know it's not for me, but I don't have any desire to go deconvert people or convert them to my thing. That's the other thing about the Reddit Atheist. They're proselytizers to the core. It is a religion in all of those aspects. And so that's one of the things that I got over as well, is not really wanting that to convince people you need to be an atheist. Because again, that's based on this idea society will be so much better if we didn't have all these religious beliefs. But that's totally sidestepping that at the end of the day, there's the problems in society, whatever we want to call them or say about them, are values disputes that are going to have to be sorted out one way or the other. And it's on that level of rubber hits the road, unstoppable force hits an immovable object. I want to uphold this value. You have an irreconcilable one. There's all sorts of things that can happen in that situation. But I think, it's why I like Tony of One Dime's definition of woke, where he says the whole problem with that is that it's a style of politics that privileges an awakening of consciousness. So we get everyone to think the same thing.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't actually have to do with the content. That's why people apply it to the right wing now. Yeah. And I think the premise of that is wrong, essentially. You need to awaken people's consciousness and get everyone the same hive mind. Mm-hmm. And then we can hammer out problems. Then we'll proceed towards Sam Harris's moral landscape. Yeah. I just don't think that's how it works.
Thank you for watching. Part 2 of this conversation will be available on the Ivory Tower Patreon page later this week. Thank you.